Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We are back again with Shadowrun Hong Kong. This time I wanted to go through decking because it's much more involved than it was in Dragonfall. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First and foremost, in order for you to be able to deck or hack in this game, you have to have a decking board, and it's going to be really important that you keep this as upgraded as you possibly can. The quality of your board and the programs you have on it is going to be a major factor in determining whether or not you'll be able to survive. So it's important that you keep your board as upgraded as possible. Now, when it comes to the programs that you want to have on here, Decrypt is going to add a 1 second to delay when hacking blocker ICs. I never use this. We'll talk more about the blocker ICs in a minute, but I think you should figure out some strategies that help you remember the numbers and then just move forward in that way. I don't have this equipped on my board at all. Boost is going to increase your speed by 20%, and keep in mind that all of these are going to increase in effectiveness over time. So I think boost goes up to level 3 by the time you're at the end game. So you definitely want to make sure you're buying the upgraded versions of any programs you use. Boost is absolutely a requirement. If there was only one program you could have, Boost is it, because it's going to determine how quickly you can get into the space that you need to occupy. So a lot of times when you're sneaking around, there are going to be 3, 4, sometimes even 5 different programs in one area, all swooping around, and there'll be specific spots you can stand in where you know for a certain amount of time nobody's going to be there, and so it's important that you can get there as quickly as possible. The boost program determines how quickly you can get to those spots. Blaster is going to allow you to do an area of effect attack, which will attack multiple programs at one time. Definitely something you want to have. I would say it's not as useful as it was in Dragonfall. In Dragonfall, a lot of times programs would be grouped together. In fact, you would start out the fight with them grouped together. Whereas in Hong Kong, it does a much better job of making all the enemies kind of spread out. So you can end up in situations where they're grouped together just because they move to try to target you easier. And so then this becomes useful, but it's not like the required program the way it was in Dragonfall. Degrade is going to cause hostile targets to take an additional 50 damage from incoming attacks. Most of the time you aren't going to need to attack, at least for the first like half of the game, I'd say. So I never use this, but definitely late game it's something to consider. It's going to make it easier for you to make those fights faster. Same with erosion, which is going to erode integrity points off of ICs and does 75 IP damage to them with an ongoing 25 IP damage for 2 rounds. So something to consider late game, but definitely not a priority for you. Next up is Firewall. Creates 5 squares of firewall that cause negative 25 IP when moving through it. Almost never use it. 25 IP is honestly, it's not a lot. So maybe if you can ensure that 3 or 4 enemies are going to walk through it, it would be worth it. But oftentimes it's hard to ensure something like that. So I don't feel like this is all that effective. Killer is a attack that does negative 100 IP damage. Killer is your #1 single target damage spell. It's definitely something that you want to have slotted as soon as possible. Killjoy does -2 AP to a single target. If you watch my party members upgrades videos, you already know I prefer to do pure damage. I'm not into attacking AP, and so I never use this whatsoever. Medic is going to allow you to heal yourself or friendly target for 75 AP. Definitely want to have this. If you're in a fight, they're oftentimes going to have the opportunity to attack you, and you need to be able to heal yourself, so this is a must-have. Next is Shield. It's going to reduce the damage from incoming attacks by 25 for 4 rounds. This is another must-have. It's going to help mitigate that damage in a way where oftentimes you won't need to heal yourself. Next is Sniffer. It's going to increase your chance to hit against enemy ICs and deckers by 20% for 3 rounds. So this is definitely useful to you when you get higher level boards that have more programs available, then this is something you want to potentially slot. Next up is suppression. So suppression is going to reduce system trace by 50. So suppression is another must have. Again, decking works differently in this game. Now, every time you initiate a round with an enemy, they're going to increase the system trace by an amount depending upon which kind of program it is for every program you're going up against. So let's say you start combat and it's against 4 enemies, and let's say they each increase system trace by 25, so it'll be 100, right? And then you're only able to kill like 1 of them. So then the next round starts. Well, when the next round starts, all of them are going to increase system trace again. So when you're in fights against large amounts of enemies, especially if the random numbers are not kind to you and you're having trouble whittling them all down, your system trace can potentially skyrocket. So suppression is very, very important to make sure you don't trigger alarms even if you're in really brutal fights. Suppression also makes it where if you have mistakes when you're sneaking around, like let's say, you know, one of the enemies catches you or whatever, it's not that big of a deal, because even though they increase your system trace, you could just wipe that out with suppression. So it's absolutely a must-have. So I would say suppression is a must-have. Booster is absolutely a must-have. I would say killer is also a must-have, and medic as well. And then everything else is kind of just a nice to have. Shield is very nice to have. Sniffer is very nice to have. Blaster is very nice to have. So as you get more and more programs, you can add more of these things on. And then you also have slow, which reduces AP of a target by 1 for 2 rounds. Again, you know I don't like targeting AP, so I never ever use that. Now, in addition to these, in a separate section, if you look at the board, it's got a section for programs and then a section for ESPs. I never used ESPs during my playthrough. You don't have to, but they do provide a nice way for you to do additional damage or provide some variety in your playstyle if that's what you want to do. You need to have at least a 1 in your ESP stats on your character sheet in order to be able to use these programs, no matter how high your decking skill is. But if you have that 1, I personally prefer to use Exploder. So basically you can throw it out for 1 AP, and then when you take control of it, you can wheel it towards whatever program you want to destroy, and then just set it to auto destruct, and it'll explode and do some really, really nice damage. Even if you only have a 1 in ESP, Exploder will do some really solid damage for you. So it's definitely something that's interesting to have. And then other than that, I also really like the shield ESP. So basically you could throw this out and it's going to add some extra shielding for you, making you even more resilient towards enemy attacks. Very nice, very useful. So again, they're not necessary at all. You can skip them for the entire game and still be a perfectly competent decker, but it's something for you to consider. Okay, so this is the way the matrix looks in Shadowrun Hong Kong. The look itself changes, but basically the idea of these Watcher ICs floating around all the time and you having to sneak past them, that is very consistent. So at first, it probably looks crazy to you, especially if you're not used to stealth games and you don't really like stealth games. But the easy thing to just keep in mind is you don't have to take it seriously. If you don't want to stealth around it, then just figure out a Watcher IC that you want to isolate, that you feel like, hey, if this wasn't on the board, it would be significantly easier for you to run through, and just run up and fight that one in an isolated fashion, and then use suppression to keep your system trace down. You could actually do that to wipe out all of them if you wanted to, even though that's not really time efficient. But this system, once you realize that with suppression you don't have to take it seriously at all, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. You don't have to restart just because you entered a fight or anything like that. Just run up and do it however you want to do. What is kind of annoying is the blocker ICs. So basically, oftentimes in order to get to the actual thing that you want to access, whether it be data or switch or whatever, you've got to get past one of these blocker ICs. And if you click on it, Usually you're going to have only a couple of options. Either you could try a manual hack, which is going to increase your system trace or potentially set up the alarm if you fail it, or you could just force your way past it, which is going to significantly increase your system trace. Now, whether or not forcing it is a issue for you depends upon the situation. A lot of times, if you know you're only hacking this one thing and then you're going to be on your way and your system trace is low like this, you can just go ahead and force it and be on your way, no problem. So don't feel like you always have to hack. But if you know you're in like a really big mission and you're not sure if there's going to be other things you have to deck into while you're doing the mission, you don't want to force willy-nilly, because sometimes all of your decking options are on the same network. So increasing system trace here will cause the next time you have to deck in that same mission for this bar to be significantly higher. It won't reset to 0. So you have to be very careful about forcing it, but at the same time, always recognize this is an option. Now, if you have to hack it, you're going to go into this mini game, which I'm sure looks absolutely crazy. Depending upon the type of board that you have, you might get additional time added to your time, or some things to make it easier. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Now, when you press start, it's going to start up a memorization game that you have to play, where you have to key in the same numbers that the game keys in. For some of you, this might be extremely easy. For me, it's not. But what I found works really well is to say the numbers while it's also, the numbers are also being keyed in, so that not only do I have the visual memorization, I also have the memorization of the numbers I said. And I found that really helped me to get through the game. And actually what you want to do is wait a second or two before you start saying it, so that you're saying it in rhythm with the way the numbers are coming out. And I think it's going to make it significantly easier. Then once you finish that, and you have to do that 9 times, then it's going to give you a bunch of patterns here, and it's going to hint at what the patterns are in these screens up here, and you basically have to match it all the way through. Again, that game could be extremely annoying, but let's show the example. So if I go ahead and press start, 9884, 9884, and as you do this, it's going to add more time up here. 9251. So the first couple are fine because it's just 4 numbers. 44473, 4473. Awesome. 16361, 16361. 679767, 679767. 811948, 811948. Was it 1? Nope. See? Annoying. 523976, 523976. 7459666, 7459666. Okay, now all these patterns come up, and basically you got to, if you get it wrong, then it'll let you try again, but you've got to match what's up here with what's down here. And it is honestly annoying, but I don't really have recommendations for how to get through that one. You basically just have to keep going, and hopefully you've done the number memorization mini game well enough where you have plenty of time to be able to match up those symbols and get where you want to go. But that is pretty much how decking works in a nutshell. We'll talk about how I feel about those changes to decking in my review, but yeah, it's interesting. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, share this content, subscribe to the channel, and become a member if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.